Dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion with the pros, the cons, the ones that have taken a side, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation building. As we span the globe for voices from the diaspora and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana. This land is our land now. As the world turns on its axis, bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adapt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Welcome to Globespan Television here in New York. Good night to everyone, to all our listeners, and I hope you tune in very early. Tonight we have one of our special guests, Mr. Tony Vera. But before we get to him, I want all of you to know that Globespan, we broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, and you can tune in there and hear us all live every night. Also, well, that should be every Monday night. Also, we are a fair and balanced network. And I've had a lot of requests over the past week to get the leaders of the political parties to come on the program. I will indeed extend an invitation to all the leaders of the political parties, large and small. And those who accept will be on the program in due time to come. But I want to say that this program is being made available by Mr. Noir Singh and by our technical directors, Mr. Devin Bissoon and Mr. Ryan Gobin. We can be heard throughout Guyana, the Caribbean, Latin America, and around the world, in the diaspora, all over you can think of. So I hope you listeners will have a good time tonight. And as I said before, Mr. Vera is here with me tonight. Mr. Vera, thank you very much for accepting my invitation to be on this program. Mr. Vera? Mr. Vera? You're on mute.
I think he's reconnecting. Just give him 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Vera, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I said, welcome to the program, Mr. Vera. Thanks for accepting our invitation to be here tonight.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
Good. We're happy to have you too. Mr. Vera, I know a lot of people know about you, but I don't think the younger generation know much about you. Maybe the older folks. But you said you're 80 years old, and I'm the first one to tell you you look like 65. So I want you to give us a background of yourself, where you began, where you started, and so forth, if you don't mind.
Well, I was born into a family of sugarcane planters, and I decided at a very young age that it would be silly of me not to pursue a career in the business which my family was in, which is sugarcane. Therefore, I became a Boca cadet in the 60s. I studied some angiosperm plant anatomy and biology at the University of Guyana. I had a pretty good night class there. And then I became technician at Vorshels. I ran the field lab for 3 or 4 years, went through assistant field manager, then administrative manager in 1976. I was made administrative manager by Bookers, because the factory was not owned by the Vera family. The factory was owned by Bookers. So on nationalization in 1976, Guysuco inherited that factory. But I kept operating it until around 1992, when I decided that I had to leave the industry because I didn't see sugar at Vorshels with much of a future. after the closure of the factory. Very much the same thing has happened at Wales recently. All the cane farmers at Wales, when they change the distance which they have to use to transport their product to a factory, once they increase it from 2 or 3 miles to 20 miles, it literally destroys you. And they've been doing that quite frequently in the past. But I can attest to the fact that it's very, very difficult to increase your capital holdings of transportation alone, in the case of farmers, to take your cane 20 miles instead of 6.
True.
The sugar industry, but I was born into the sugar industry in 1945, and therefore I can easily say that I love it very much. So I kept abreast of what was happening and looked on with great alarm at many of the things I saw happening. But by then, I wasn't like exactly an active participant. Found support within the government to join. I left Guyana and went to live in. But I'm back in Guyana now because I've decided to live here until I have to be buried here.
Okay, good. So how many years you spent abroad?
About 3.
Oh, that's not
I
bad.
No, I know. I even bought a house in Palmetto Bay, Miami,
Okay.
and hated it. I just I loved Guyana. I had some money, I invested it, and I came back, and since 2011, I was living here.
Okay, good. Now, let me ask you a quick question. And as I take this time out, I will extend our condolences to the Adrien Young family, relatives, and friends, and hope that sometime in the future she'll be buried and hope she rests in peace. What do you think about the Adrien Young story?
I have not seen a proper report of it, a factual report on it. I've seen people running around making accusations, and it's happened again and that kind of thing. But I'm waiting for a full report on it. I probably will see it in tomorrow's newspaper, and I will form an opinion as to what exactly it is. I try not to get involved in those things until the facts emerge and one can come to a logical decision as to what exactly transpired. Because many times, especially in an election season, the situations are being exploited. And I'm not saying by who, and I will just say that I personally don't form an opinion until I see what the facts are.
That's fair. That's very, very fair. Now, we're going to talk politics a little later on, but let's get right into the sugar industry right now. Uh, the last time I think I knew you were a member of the board of directors of the Guyana Sugar Corporation, Guysuco, when CSR Singh was there. How long you serve on that board?
2.5 years.
And you resigned?
Yeah, I would say.
Why? Why you resigned?
Well, I saw it was being run badly. I thought that my being there would prompt someone to pay attention to the observations that I was making. But in fact, nobody paid attention, and I saw quite a few things which disturbed me very greatly, and I decided that I can't be associated with it because it was bound to come to a sad end, and indeed it has. You can't say Guysuco's situation now is anything but sad.
Okay. Now, let me go back. You were the vice chairman at one time, and that was from when to when?
2020, September, October to 2.5 years after. Sometime 2023, in the middle of 2023, I just resigned. And then in 2024, I resigned from being a consultant to the Ministry of Agriculture.
So when you were on the board, what were some of your suggestions or proposals?
Guysuco is wallowing in a morass of problems because Guysuco, I don't think they understand what their problem is. I don't think they understand it at all. And if I might be allowed to quote a few things on here, and I've written this thing and I've given it even to the president since 2022 or 23. Here is what has happened in the world. In Louisiana in 1981, there were 265,000 acres on the sugarcane. But by 2020, this had increased to 500,000 acres. Brazil, a place noted for cheap labor, the sugar industry production increased from 3 million tons in 80 to 7 million tons in 2010. Australia, the same thing. But in Guyana, 19
Folks, we're having a little technical difficulty with the internet back in Guyana there. But as soon as it's resolved itself, we'll hear again from Mr. Vera. So Vera, hearing me now?
Yeah. What's
Go ahead.
going on?
I know we're having difficulty with the internet system, and I've made several complaints that I don't know why we can't get a proper internet system in Guyana. I really don't know why. But go ahead, Mr. Vera.
Well, I'm a little. So the invention of the sugarcane harvester in the 80s is what exactly put the nail in the coffin of Guysuco. Because since the 70s, we knew it was coming, but since the 70s, we had tried to convert our lands from the camel bed, which is shaped in a camel, to flat land with a ridge and furrow layout. In 1976, 77, 78, and when we started that process, we got into a lot of trouble because our soils are very acid, they're very heavy clays. Getting that layout in Guyana was almost impossible. And at that time, there was the laser leveler had not been invented yet. The laser leveler came in around 97, 98, 99. It became in common use. But without a laser leveler and without leveling that land, bulldozing all those beds, flattening the land, and establishing a proper system of machine-friendly layout, Guysuco will never be able to solve its problems. That's the morass it's in now. It's in a lot of trouble because it has a field layout which is not friendly to machines. And actually, they're using machines which are not friendly to working under our sort of damp conditions. The bell loader is a good example. I wouldn't buy that thing to put in my garden, much less in sugarcane field.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think it was a mistake for APNU to close, I think, 3 or 4 sugar estates?
It's difficult for me to say. I personally understand that APNU made that decision based on the fact that these problems that I have outlined for you are and have been for them unsolvable. They had no. It was a completely big, complete business decision. It had nothing to do with ancestry and ethnics and so on. I would not have closed LBI and more at the same time. Closing both of those sugar estates, I wouldn't have closed those. I was on the board, and I came off to go to Wales to pioneer aquaculture, the growth of tilapia. And Wales Estate, if I had to make a choice, for example, I'm just saying, if I have to make an example between closing Wales and closing iFlock at that time, I would absolutely agree, decide to close iFlock and not Wales. Wales is further up the Demerara River. It receives less rainfall per annum. And in my time, 70s, 80s, Wales was almost the best yielding sugar estate in Demerara because the land is higher. Guyana coastland, as you go from the coast inland, every 10 miles, the land rises about a foot. So Wales Estate would have far less drainage problems than iFlock, which is also facing the Atlantic. So maintaining drainage structures like cocos and so on to go to the Atlantic Ocean as compared to the Demerara River is a very, very substantial difference in expenditure. So yes, they came to the conclusion that the labor was dying on them. They didn't have an answer for the problems the mechanization is posing to them, and so they decided that it would make good business sense for them. Because whatever you want to say, of all the people that I know, the guy who would be less likely to make a decision based on ethnicity would be Clive Thomas, and he was chairman, and most of these decisions were made by him. Uh, Unfortunately, I think he might have been misled into which exactly areas need to close and which need to stay open. But I personally didn't have any major problem with the decisions that you can't, if your workforce is dying on you and you have to cut down because you can't have machines in your fields because of the wet weather and the layout of your fields and the heavy clay and the below sea level. Let me tell you what Guyana is. Guyana receives 93 inches of rainfall per year. Now, let's take Cuba. They take 52 inches a year. Let's take India, 42 inches a year. Brazil, 55 inches. We are double everybody else, and the rain falls almost all year round. We don't have extended periods of dry whereby we could design and operate a mechanical harvesting system which would be compatible with good economics. So, and therefore, we've been struggling with this problem since the 70s. And we really haven't come up with a proper answer yet. The only answer that I could say that we could look at would be Louis.
Folks, you have to bear with us tonight. The internet is acting up here very, very badly. It's rather a shame that we can't have proper internet system until now. It is beyond me to know that we can't have a proper internet system. But we have to live with the times.
Bad, man.
Yes, Mr. Vera, go ahead. I know the internet is interrupting us all the time, but go ahead.
I'm not even sure where I got cut off, so I could pick up. No, I had no real problem. I work closely with Dr. Clive. I have the greatest of respect for that man. He's not a racist. He's an intellectual, and he saw that, and he used to write on it. He was one of the most prolific writers on the economics of the sugar industry, and he was showing all the time, through hard numbers and facts, that we are struggling. But then we have this emotional relationship to the fact that sugar was, our forefathers. But if it don't make proper sense now, you can't use the taxes of everyone to just fix up the situation for a few people. Because, for example, the same opportunity arose to help in Linden in the bauxite company, but it was just sold off because the support of the particular party in power at that time was not there. That's my only guess. I don't know. So I don't want. I mean, that is not an area I thought we would deal on exactly, and I
I know, but before closing the four
For
sugar
example,
estates,
I remember years ago. You're a Guyanese, so you know where Enmore Estate is, and you know where LBI
right, right,
Estate is.
right.
When I be but they're not. They're pretty close. Now you had a situation where you wanted to shut down something because of labor shortages and so on. So you shut Diamond. Of all the things you do, you leave those two factories side by side and you shut Diamond. Now Diamond had farmers and cane coming from almost Susdike. But you shut Diamond Estate because you claim the factory is not working good. But those decisions have to do with not the factory no good. To take all the parts of a factory from LBI and take it to Diamond don't cost anywhere near as much as 1 million tons of cane every year from Diamond to LBI.
So my question to you, before the Granger administration closed the four sugar estates, I think Mr. Holder was the Minister of Agriculture. Did anyone contacted you and ask you for your advice?
That decision was not made by the board. That decision, I will tell you straight off. I don't. I'm saying it very plainly. I was on that board. I hadn't come off yet. When I was appointed to that board in 2016, by after 4 or 5 months, when I submitted to uh, Professor Clive my thoughts on aquaculture as a diversification for sugarcane, they asked me to stop being a non-executive director and become an executive coordinator for aquaculture, and I went to Wales. I am saying to you, however, that the decision to make those closures came when I was on that board, and that was not a board decision. That decision was made elsewhere. That was not a board decision. It was made somewhere else.
It was made by the government, I guess by
Yes,
cabinet.
I guess so.
Okay.
Too much
Mr.
of
Vera,
that has been going on, actually.
go ahead.
Too much of that has been going on. The agriculturalists and the technicians and so on are not the ones making decisions on these things. These are political decisions, and really and truly, we have to remove politics from the sugar industry. It should be like with more mechanization, introduction system and layout for mechanical harvesting, because relying only on hand labor is going to be a complete and utter disaster for this country.
Do you think that politics interjected into the sugar industry caused it to collapse?
Absolutely. From day one. From day one, from the time Forbes Boardroom introduced nationalization, 10 years. 1986, it was nationalized. By 1986, Desmond had inherited an industry after Forbes Boardroom died, which was producing around 59,000 tons. At which time, he invited bookers to come and manage the industry for him. And by the time when they came, they within 10 years they put back the production very close to 300,000 tons a year by 2006. In fact, in 2004 or 5, I think they produced 325,000 tons. So management has always been, but once government steps back, as Desmond did, and allowed bookers to manage the thing, it fared quite well. I mean, the facts are there, right? I'm not making up these things. I'm just telling you what the facts tell me.
I
And if
understand. I
you see,
understand. So do you think it was a mistake for the late Forrest Burnham to nationalize the sugar industry, or was it a good decision he made?
big mistake, big mistake. What he should have done, and what we see happening with increasing as time goes by, is that, say in Trinidad, for example, they wanted to nationalize something, cable and wireless. They're Trinidad and Tobago Communications, TSTT. In our case, that I sold out the whole thing to Teleatlantic, GT&T. But in Trinidad, they kept 49%. They sold 51% so that now the entity that is taking over making the legitimate management decisions, and the government is just getting income from it on behalf of their people, and everybody is happy. So I think that at the time when Booker should have been offered a deal whereby they could keep 51% and give us 49%, because we were we're running into a socialist type of thing. We advise for Boardroom. Far more powerful than he was before the nationalization. Absolutely factual. Numerous strikes within the sugar industry had nothing to do with industrial relationships. Those strikes were politically motivated in this country.
Okay, so now take us back, because the topic is Guysuco, past, present, future. When Guysuco start to lose money, do you know?
Yes, it would be around 2008 or 9. I know the general thing, but when the yield started to go down, because the yield went down to an extent where they decided that they were making too much losses, and the cost of production had risen to 25 or 30 cents a pound in a world which had 12 cents a pound as a more market standard. So from that time, I very easily can pick it up, but I don't have that right here at this moment. But there did come a time when it became very plain to those in power that the sugar industry is going to have massive inflows of funds. And now we have to come back to the Skeldon project. Dr. Rose, the Skeldon project is what destroyed the Guyana industry. When the Skeldon project started, Guysuco was not in a bad situation, which is why we were actually, however, on the verge of losing the European Union subsidy. And many of us who understood, my father and myself went to visit Mr. Jagdio in Hodgmanson house. He hadn't moved into the other house yet. He had just been made president, and he asked us to come and give us his opinion, our opinion on the Skeldon project. And we told him that we thought it was a very dicey project in view of the fact that we were going to lose the European subsidy of 30% within 3 years. And he said something to the effect of, when that happens, the world market sugar price will go up. Well, of course, it never went up. But in the end, what happened was all that money that the European Union gave us as compensation to beef up our existing sugar entity so that it could be competitive worldwide, since they were withdrawing the subsidy, that money was used on that Skeldon project. They borrowed money as well. I remember seeing, because I was working, and I had my own newscast at the time, and I saw one of the documents that came from Guysuco. Albion Estate was asking for $500, $600, or $700 million, and they only get them $200 million or something of the sort. During that same period, and I was to build Skeldon, they were denying other estates important maintenance money. And when Skeldon went down, they took everything else with it, because the attempt to mechanize there also was very flawed and very poor, and it collapsed.
Mr. Vera, how is it that the price of sugar went up to surpass the world market? Why the people who were managing the sugar factories and the government did not see this coming?
Well, I can't answer that question. What I am saying is that, in my opinion, once that sugarcane harvester was the biggest job, when I am a sugar estate manager, I have been for 15 or 20 years. My biggest expenditure was cutting cane. The cutting of the cane by hand was an enormously expensive operation, far more than anything else we were doing. So now you ended up with competing by cutting it by hand with men, whilst a machine, I have the numbers here, hold on a second. A machine could cut between 400 and 600 tons of cane per day. I'm sorry, I don't need the hectares. The chopper harvester, I was doing a research recently. I have it right here. All right, let's go. The real problem is getting the cane out of the field to the factories. A good chopper harvester cuts between 400 to 600 tons per day. If the harvest is to be economically feasible, I would venture to suggest that in Guyana, the harvesters they have don't reach more than 100 tons a day, because the conditions are poor and bad, and there's no way to load it after the harvester cut it down. So mechanization has been our biggest problem. And once you have people cutting that cane with those machines, and we're able to keep the price of sugar worldwide at a very low level whilst your own is going up, because obviously people, because of the rising in the cost of living, people were calling for more and more and more money, especially in Guyana, where they were calling for very much more money for extras of all kinds. There's grass growing in between the cane, or there's mud in the field. It made cane cutting very, very expensive, and that is one of the major reasons why everything else failed. I can't add anything to that.
But why we did not mechanize in order to stay ahead of the cost?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that to mechanize properly, you have to level out all those fields. Our soils are high rainfall countries like Guyana. When the rain falls, obviously it's going to drain off and go someplace. And where it's going to go is into the Atlantic Ocean in our case. Now, because of the high rainfall, when that water runs out from your fields, that water is taking with it all the cations in your field, the calcium and the magnesium and so on. As it is removing those, the iron is being replaced by hydrogen. Now, once you start to do that, the pH of a soil is the inverse logarithm of the hydrogen ion in solution. And therefore, the more you remove the bases and you're only replacing all the positive ions with hydrogen, you end up with an extremely acid soil. And in Guyana, I'm saying to you that I think that one of our biggest problems right now is that our soils are very, very acid due to neglect and etc. over the last 25, 30 years.
We had something like about, I think it was 10 or 11 sugar estates. Today, now we're down to 4. With the, by the way, the former CEO rebuilt the Rosal estate, and that was done in a record pace of time. How is that estate doing now? Do you know?
Yes, it's struggling. They've rebuilt the factory, yes, but I have friends who still operate within the sugar industry, and I will have to tell you that all those boilers have problems at Rose Hall, all of them. Whether Rose Hall could be a functioning entity without massive or even more massive infusions of funds is very questionable for me. I don't see how they could actually do it, because one, nobody is reporting. They will say 600 people. If you want 6,000 people to turn up to work to cut that cane, you can't tell me you 600 came out. What happened? What are you going to do about the rest? So I am not sure I want to discuss Rosal tonight.
I understand. I understand. Now, as I said, we have 4 sugar estates. Do you think we need more or we need less?
I was doing a small exercise. Well, let's say we want to produce 100,000 tons of sugar per year. Now, 12 tons of cane to make a ton of sugar, which is the national average right now, was not good, but for Guyana and our wet conditions, it's kind of par for the course. You need to produce 1.2 million tons of cane. Now, here is where we run into the problems. When you're using mechanical harvesters, you can't have the same harvesting regime which you had when you were hand cutting the thing. When you were hand cutting that cane in the old days, you had a 30-week a year crop. That is over 200 days a year that people were cutting cane. But a man, when the rain was actually falling, a man could go into the field and cut the cane. We used to actually burn 2, 3, 4 days in advance so that we could have people going to, because there was no sunshine which allow you to burn. Once you are dealing with machinery, you can't do that anymore. You're going to have a shorter harvesting period. And I'm calculating the maximum amount of harvest days I would say we should do now is 141 days. I sat in the boardroom. They told us they can't plow the land because they couldn't meet the planting program because only 75 opportunity days were there for machines to work. But here you are telling me you only have machines working 75 days plowing, but you need 200 and something days to cut with machines. That is the kind of stupidity. But anyway, I'm saying that you have to shorten the crop, which means at 100,000 tons, and I calculated the iFlock factory grinds at 105 tons cane per hour. That would be 2,520 tons per day. Breman, 102. Albion, 168 tons cane per hour. So all three of those estates grinding properly will produce 9,000 tons, could grind 9,000 tons of sugar cane per day. Now, the ponds are not a problem. Getting the pond to the factory is not the problem. And Guyana has the cheapest transportation in the world. In Brazil, a 350 horsepower tractor is pulling 35-ton trailer to the factory. In Guyana, a 50 horsepower tractor could pull 100 tons with 5 tons each, 500 tons. In other words, we have the cheapest, most reliable, less expensive to maintain waterway system in the world. I don't think we appreciate it too much. So therefore, the problem is not getting the cane from the pond to the factory, is getting out of the field into the pond. We're going right back to this thing of bad layout, lack of machinery to do the job properly, and therefore they end up not able to cut the cane and to grind it expeditiously or on time. Because sugarcane is a very funny thing. After you burn sugarcane, immediately after, sugarcane is a very tenuous, is a disaccharide. It's two sugars, fructose and glucose. They're joined together by hydraulic links. As soon as you burn that cane, it wants to separate back, which means separating it would have glucose and it would have fructose, but it wouldn't have sucrose. Which is why at iFlock I had advocated when I was on the board this last time that iFlock Estate considers producing ethanol, because it so happens that Guyana takes 12 tons of cane to make a ton of sugar, but Brazil, Australia, and Louisiana, more like 7 and 8. We are harvesting, transporting to the factory, and grinding twice as much cane to make 1 ton of sugar as these other places. However, it turns out that because when the sugar molecule divides, the disaccharide becomes fructose and glucose. Both of those could be used to generate ethanol, ethyl alcohol. I had worked out that iFlock acid would be far more economical if it were producing ethanol rather than sucrose, because it's a heavy rainfall estate. Now rainfall, let me see something here. 1 second. I don't have it at hand. But Alpha Estate is right now, Alpha Estate, well, not even right now. Historically, Alpha Estate has received more rain than any other estate. It's the wettest one and the lowest lying with the most toxic soils, which is why when they closed Wales and left Alpha open, I was left with a huge question mark on my head as to who exactly made this particular decision.
Let me ask you the question. Why is it, okay, sugar do have byproducts like ethanol, molasses. What other byproducts can be produced from sugar?
But ethanol is you take the sugar cane, you grind it. But you don't try to make sugar from it. That uses a lot of energy. So what you do is you create a kind of a syrup and you hold it in your tanks, and over time you distill it and produce ethanol. The ethanol can be used as fuel for cars. Ethanol can be used as during COVID-19, God knows how much ethanol was sold worldwide. I can't even guess, but I imagine millions and millions of gallons were sold because that was what everybody was using to kill the COVID germ on their hands. And because ethanol is alcohol you can drink. Other ibuprofen, alcohol, and other things which could kill those, and those things are dangerous because they could cause blindness. Only ethanol is the only alcohol which actually you could take in large amounts without killing yourself. Just leave it there.
Okay.
But
the molasses.
No, it will only cause I got a Bosch. I on my own time went through a whole load. I called up the Brazilian embassy and I went in to see them and I asked them for all the places in Brazil which manufactures parts for factories. And then I got 50 or 60 companies and I emailed all 50 or 60 companies with the permission of the board to go and do it. And in the end, I short-thinged them and Bosch, the company Bosch, which is an international company, but they said that they could put the proper thing in at iFlock for $5 million US. And at $5 million US, I calculated, and they could make back that money in 5, 6, 7 years. Because ethanol, when you sell ethanol and compare to sugar, you make twice as much money, twice as much yield of cash from every acre. Instead of 300 or 400 US for sugar, you make it 900 to 1,000 for ethanol. And you have to remember that molasses is not, you don't need molasses to make ethanol. Ethanol is a distillation of the juice from the sugarcane plant. In molasses, a little bit of the sugarcane plant juice is left in the molasses. And less than 3%. When it's greater than 3%, we go back and look at the factory because the factory actually is now working very well. But in sugarcane, you got 97% sugars. So you must know which one is more economical. Which will yield far more. So any distillate of the sugarcane plant juice is ethanol or rum. You don't have to make molasses to make rum. You could get it directly from the sugarcane juice.
So you're saying that ethanol, it could be profitable. Molasses could be profitable. What other byproducts can we make from sugarcane?
I can't think of any, and I wouldn't like to extrapolate anything, but I would like to say this because we seem to have a lot of time. Historically, the way Guyana controls its irrigation, the way it controls insects in the soil and so on, was by flooding. We even had flood fallowing, which was a very nice way of putting the cane underwater for 6 months so that it could ameliorate the soil. It created a stability in the aggregates of the soil. It changed certain things and created nitrogen, and etc. So the benefits of flood falling had been known for centuries in Guyana, and therefore, and of course, we don't have overhead irrigation, and we have flood irrigation. So our fields are actually ponds. They're a pond. You could just block up one end and throw water inside, and it will keep water inside. I'm saying, and made the previous government bring export from the United States who verified that what I was saying was correct, that it would be feasible for Guyana to become a major aquaculture country because of that layout. The layout is there. When people buy that land, they have to bulldoze it and level it, and decades afterwards, they're having settlement problems. But as they exist, I'm not saying we could put all that land in thing, but I'm saying that based on my calculations, the money from growing Vaname prawns on the coastal estates, IFLOC, LBI, and moreover, that kind of land, would be a factor of 10. If sugar is $300, well, not even a factor of 10. If sugarcane gives us per acre around 800 or 900 US dollars a year, if it has a good yield. But if one field growing Vaname prawns will give you 300,000 to 400,000 US a year, each field. So this is chalk and cheese. But nobody wants to listen to. I wrote the feasibility. Took 1 year to do it, and even when I was sitting on the board of directors, that was not a full-time job for me. I produced a feasibility which I gave to the president, and immediately on showing him the feasibility, they allocated money. But there were 2 or 3 non-negotiable aspects of the feasibility. One, it had to be sugarcane land because those lands are already designed to be ponds, with the trenches feeding the water in and the drainage coming out of the high dams on the sides. 2, it had to be close to the Atlantic because Vaname prawns has to be close to 8, 9, 10,000 parts million of salt. Atlantic Ocean water must be 28 to 30,000 parts million of NaCl, which is salt, sodium chloride. They didn't read the feasibility properly, and they started to give me areas up the Borbis River where they had 1,000 parts million of salt, and up the other river to the Skeldon estate. Because the East Bank estate land, now aquaculture is different to sugarcane. There's no big heavy work in it. Aquaculture is that you have to go 365 days a year into those fields and feed those things. You have to have security. You have to have people walking around those ponds, making sure there are no leaks. Then when the thing is harvested, you could process it. You could just walk around and see those big companies like Pretty Paul and so on. There are a lot of people get employment and in aquaculture. I estimate 1,000 hectares of thing could employ 10 or 12,000 people. 365 days a year, not seasonal like sugarcane work. Nobody really reads anything. They don't understand anything. They're just looking to see what they could get out of whatever it is they're spending and put it in their pockets, and everyone else could just take a hike. I know it's not exactly the message you were hoping.
You seem to have very good knowledge, both agricultural and technical knowledge of the sugar industry and its equipment and so forth. Can you tell our listeners what went wrong with Skeldon Sugar Factory after it was rebuilt?
The factory, we can't find out who did it, but the factory had 2 major problems. The first problem, you have to remember that a lot of the canes coming into the Skeldon factory was coming in ponds, but it was chopped up. They were cutting the cane into billets and putting it in the pond. So they had to discharge it, the thing to the factory, they had to lift the entire pond out of the water. So they call it pond dumper. That thing gave trouble from day one. Because they were using machines to harvest the canes, a lot of mud was coming into the factory, which was gumming up the factory, the grinding of the cane. But to make matters even worse, all our factories use mills to compress the cane, to squeeze out the juice, compression. At Skeldon, for some strange reason, they use a diffuser, which is really crushing up the cane and leaching it out with massive amounts of water. Now, it so happens that because of the mud that was in the cane, it caused a tremendous problem, and that is one of the main reasons why this Skeldon project failed. The second reason was that the right people who should have built that factory for us is Walchan Nagar from India. They gave it to these Chinese people who never built. And as the shadow minister of agriculture, I went to Skeldon factory more than once, and I saw pipes being modified because that part of the factory came from a different place than this part of the factory, and the computer wasn't working because it's all Chinese. And finally, to get it to run in some manner, they actually disconnected all those computerized programs and just ran the factory. Dr. Rose, that is the big joke all by itself. Everything they bought for that factory reached in 2016. I was part of a group that went from the board to see what we could salvage from the Skeldon factory. The entire boiler, in a couple of years, it had not worked. The entire boiler had collapsed. Every part of it had rusted and collapsed. The cogeneration was unworkable. You would have to totally rebuild it from scratch.
So what do you think the government should do with the factory now?
But that factory can't be done, and nothing can be done with it. The factory is finished. To fix that factory, when I was on the board and they were bringing back, they asked me to head, and I was chairing the group that did the strategic plan to restructure Guysuco. They said, when we asked them to do the plan for Skeldon, they said 15 million US to just make a start. And we didn't have that kind of money then. The factory there is in pretty bad shape, and then the cultivation would have to be redone. The Skeldon project, Skeldon Estate, when I was a Boca cadet, I spent nearly a year at Skeldon, learning about the sugarcane plant. Skeldon Estate was the best yielding sugar estate in this entire country. It used to produce almost 3 tons of sugar per acre. Skeldon Estate was around 10,000 acres. And then somebody wake up one day and decided that they're going to have double that acreage to 20,000 acres, and then let farmers plant an acreage equal to that, another 10,000 acres to make 30,000 acres to produce 140,000 tons of sugar. Well, my father and myself told Mr. Jagdio, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, man. Sadly, you were right. So Skeldon is the dead duck. I don't think they could do anything there anymore. They were asking us to try and find something to do there, and I honestly can't think of a single thing that you could do there because it's 30,000 acres. It's a huge area. Indeed, it's huge. But anyone who is saying that it is possible, feasible, and economical to grow cane back at Skeldon and take it to the Albion factory has to be understood that the use of cocaine in this country is illegal. And that's all I want to say on that particular issue.
Mr. Vera, let me ask you this question. If the sugar factories, maybe one or two of them, produce ethanol and molasses, that can beef up the cost and at least stabilize the sugar industry with those byproducts. Plus, packaged sugar is selling on the world market, and brown sugar is selling readily in the world market as well. Don't you think?
Well, if when you're doing ethanol, you can't think of ethanol and molasses. Molasses is a byproduct of the manufacture of sugar. After you boil the juice until it becomes very thick, and the crystals in the massiquite, this is what they call it, crystallize out. That becomes the sugar, and what's left is the molasses. So really, it's a byproduct of sugar manufacturing, which means that it really don't have no intrinsic value on its own. But people liked it because they thought it was healthy to use it, etc. But it's got a lot of amino acids, a lot of good products inside, but very little sugar, less than 3%. As I said, if it's more than 3%, the factory is not functioning too good. So once you're doing ethanol, for Guyana, it is the best option as far as I'm concerned. Because when you cut the cane, within 24 hours, the cane starts to deteriorate. The sucrose and the glucose, the disaccharide divides up and become two monosaccharides, fructose and glucose. But for ethanol production, it doesn't matter. So now this heavy TCTS, there's not an issue anymore for you, because I understand from my researches that 1 ton of cane from Brazil, 1 ton of cane from Australia, 1 ton of cane from Guyana will all yield 20 gallons of molasses. But 1 ton of cane from Guyana, 1 ton of cane from Brazil, 1 ton of cane will only produce half a pound of sugar, whilst those other places will produce 1 pound of sugar. So doing ethanol production instead of sugar. But we have this thing that sugar is not the thing. I don't use sugar anymore. The most recent science is that I am pre-diabetic, of course, but I have been pre-diabetic for 7 years, and I just stopped eating sugar, stopped eating all carbohydrates. My A1 is reading as if I am non-diabetic now. But it's becoming plain across the globe that half the sugar of sucrose, in other words, the fructose aspect of it, the human body don't have a way to metabolize it, and so it's stored in the liver as fat. And sooner than later, it's going to be declared a poisonous substance. And the sugar will only be used like... You remember the high fructose corn syrup that used to be the sweetener for soft drinks, and they stopped it because the fructose was damaging people? Well, half of the sugar in sucrose is fructose. In fact, the sweeter part. Those of us who are athletes, and I like to say that I was in my younger days as an athlete, when you taste glucose, it don't taste anywhere near as sweet as sucrose, because the fructose is really, really sweet compared to glucose. So I believe, yes, that if the sugar industry were to change and produce ethanol in some estates, and Albion Estate is a big factory, Albion Estate, if they could manage it properly, get it properly organized for a thing, and they could... Dr. Rose, there is one part of the equation that I haven't touched on. It's more of an accident than... Because of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, any sugar we produce here would have to be bought by other countries within CARICOM, in a single market and economy. At this, in the Caribbean are Guyana and Belize. It means that if a Trinidadian wants to buy any sugar other than Guyana sugar and Belize sugar from any other place, they would have to pay 30% tariff on it. So therefore, when we bag our sugar and package it, I remember that instead of getting 300 pounds per ton, we were getting close to 600 or 700 per ton when you bag it off. So it was, and if we produce white sugar at Albion, which we can, then we would have a higher quality sugar like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, chocolate manufacturers, sweet manufacturers. They would have to buy our white sugar rather than imported white sugar, because we are producing it here, and all over the Caribbean they would have to buy that white sugar from us. So that complicates the issue for us. But I'm still saying that we have problems which are very difficult to overcome, and I'm not sure that the people who could overcome them are sitting in the seats which they should be sitting in.
But if we produce ethanol, that should at least increase the cost for us to get closer to the world market price.
But ethanol, I'm not sure with Mr. Trump what the situation is, but if we were producing ethanol in Guyana, we would be producing ethanol at a reasonable price, but because of the Carbon Basin Initiative, the US would have to take it duty-free. And that would mean that we would be a very viable competitor to ethanol from Brazil, which have to pay the tariff. But they have to resolve that problem. The problem is you have cane growing in the field, you have to get it into a pond, and then the pond is carried to the factory to start the process. That's unless you solve that fundamental problem, this issue will never be resolved. You have to solve it. And what you do is you look at the whole problem and you say, okay, the problem is not the factories. The problem is not getting the cane in from the pond to the factory. The problem is getting the cane out of the field into the pond. So now that you have identified the problem, everyone knows that this is where the problem lies. I am not sure they're paying enough attention to it, but that is where the problem lies. And they're buying equipment which are not appropriate. They should send some people to Louisiana. If you have the time, look in your search engine and the computer, put Louisiana cane cutting with machine and see the difference between what those people are doing and what we are doing here, because they have a right layout for it. The Louisiana system is a layout which is very friendly to machines. And it's there for us to go and see. We'll bring Cubans here, or people from India. The Louisiana system is what we have to look at, because that is formerly swampy land.
So
And therefore they were able, heavy rainfall, swampy land, they were able to grow. Louisiana is growing 4 million tons of sugar per year. It's a big
wow.
industry.
So tell us now how we solve the present problems at Guysuco.
Well, you have to bring, even if I had identified the bringing of a gentleman, his name is Mike Galpin. I won't be vexed because I call his name here tonight, but this is a former employee of John Deere who has become a consultant in Louisiana, USA. And 30 years ago, John Deere company had decided that they wanted to manufacture a really outstanding machine. And so they got together a couple of guys, including Galpin, and they sent them all over the world. Every country 15 degrees north and south of the equator, they send them to those countries, which are tropical countries growing sugarcane, to see what the difficulties are. And so therefore that man has enormous experience, and he could come and tell them what the layout they need is and what machines they should buy. And he's prepared to come for $1,000 a day. And he could come for a week or 2 or 3. You don't have to come here and be a whole long year or 2. Dr.
Is
Rose,
there,
your connection driving me to drink. Except
I know it's your connection there.
I'm drinking Diet Pepsi.
You're drinking that, but it still got sugar in it though.
Aspartame? Oh, it's the Diet Pepsi, the Pepsi, the Coca-Cola Max.
It don't have sugar in
And
it.
only thing, huh?
It
No, it
don't
has
have sugar.
aspartame. They don't put sugars in there. It's
Okay.
got 0 calories.
One of our listeners has asked me a question here to ask you. When
Yes.
you were on the board and when you were
Yeah.
the vice chairperson, as you said, what stopped you from trying to implement or get the other board members to support you to implement some of the things you're mentioning today? What prevented you?
The CEO. The
You could
CEO.
not have convinced the CEO?
Huh? No, I don't think he.
The last CEO or the
CEO
or the
made the
one before the
allegation.
last one?
The last one.
That's
This
Jason
this one
Ryan.
wasn't. Yeah, the CEO. I don't. He was. He wanted his technical team to make all decisions, and he didn't like it. The fact that I had enough experience in my past that I could make suggestions which would be far more. For example, the use of drones. I had submitted to them that the South Africans had discovered that the use of drones to apply sweeteners to the sugar cane to take less tons of cane to make a ton of sugar was so effective that it was better than a helicopter. We using airplanes. A helicopter is far more effective because it moves slow and the wind that's blowing the stuff down gets it under the. And they found that the drones far cheaper. So I'm not sure they put in that no. And I had asked them, and they had agreed to buy the drones. I had agreed with them that they must not buy any more bell loaders because the thing is not it's not proper. We need a proper thing, a proper machine for our wet conditions. No, they were very reluctant to accept anything, and that board is not. Eh, you ever saw the Guysuco board? Analyze the members of Guysuco board?
No, but I know a few members in it though.
Well, I will tell you this. I don't. Maybe I shouldn't go there. I'm saying though, generally, I'm saying that is not a board with any knowledge of sugar, whereby if I say something, they understand how that it is valid and not some concoction by the CEO and his technical team. And I'm saying that almost all those people are compromised. They're contractors working in Warbees. They have businesses in Georgetown, which is connected to the Demerara sugar terminals. They're cane farmers. And I'm saying that there are very few, if any, on that board. Several of them have never even been in a cane field.
So what were their contributions on the
Was on
board?
the previous board, just Dr. Rose. If I might be allowed, I'm not saying I'm saying that the previous board that I was on, 2016, they had George James. They had at least 5 men who worked in sugar on that board. And when you said something, they understood exactly what you were saying. Whereby, when I made my presentations to the board, they saw immediately that what I was saying had merit, and they decided that they would ask me to come off the non-executive board and become the an executive in charge of diversification to aquaculture. But they had George James, they had Joe Alfred, they had some Dr. Clive Thomas, they had some very hot men on that board, men who understood sugar and men who worked in sugar. Most of them, at least 4 of those members were former estate managers. Not some lady from Region 6 who never been in a cane field and that kind of thing. So you can't run a business whereby. Also, I have to tell you, I know that you at one time you had wrote many enthusiastic letters about this disease, the racing. After I was a director of Guysuco before, I was also a member of Caribbean Broadcast Union for 6 months, and they offered me to be a director. Up to now, Patrick Kojo, who is the top man but he retired now, and Vic Fernandez, who was the president at the time, are still very close friends of mine. So I've worked on other boards already. Mr. Skeldon doesn't understand that when he's working on a board, he's working with under to do. And that is what caused all the rancor and the bad feeling and the quarreling and the cutting up that ensued. We put up with it for 2.5 years, and both the chairman and I as a result of what we saw going on and the fact that we as a board went to see the president 5 or 6 times. That never happened in history. We went and complained about this, about the fact that the policies that we are enunciating are not being carried out by the estate staff.
And what was the decision? What was the verdict?
There was no verdict. That's why I resigned. There was no verdict. I resigned because I saw corruption. I saw corruption, which I couldn't have myself associated with it because I saw that they were heading to a precipice. I saw it. And the fact is that I told everyone, I wrote all these things I'm saying to you. I wrote it and I gave it to the president, directly to him, because I was working as his consultant. And I'm not sure why, but he couldn't get. Mustafa just continued with the. The $97 billion they're giving the Ministry of Agriculture this year, in 2012, they started allocation. You may as well take that money and go on top of the Demerara Bridge and throw it down and watch it. At least it will provide some entertainment to see it floating out to the Atlantic. And maybe some Guyanese will be able to pick up a few dollars. That's the only thing they're going to see about it. It's very badly run. The corruption in Guysuco is horrendous. I couldn't work with it. I'm sorry, I couldn't work with it. And I wrote in the newspaper, and all of them got back to me, and I said, okay, if you're not going to pay option, and I can't accept it.
Mr. Vera, what the future holds for Guysuco? Do you think it could ever be profitable again? Even though it produces ethanol and molasses, those byproducts, and you think it can be profitable again?
They have one problem to resolve, Dr. Rose. They have to get the cane out of the field into a pond to go to the factory. If they can do that expeditiously and within a certain price range, to make their product competitive worldwide, yes, they would. I'm saying, however, that from what I'm seeing now, most of these people don't even understand what I've been trying to say here to you tonight, much less to know what to do to solve those problems.
So tell our listeners what is preventing them from getting the cane out of the field into the pond.
But they're losing the battle between they're buying the wrong equipment. The fields are laid out wrong. That field, the field layout that Guysuco has settled on, which is a kind of a broadbed, it's not appropriate for machines. When you understand sugarcane cultivation, like I do, and somebody tells you something, the minute they say something to you, you know exactly what it is they're saying. So let me give you an example. I was speaking to one of the John Deere people who went to Skeldon because they were having difficulties with one of the John Deere harvesters. Now, these things are 400,000 US. Those things are not cheap. They're very expensive things. And they reach 600. When they're working good in right layout, they harvest 600 tons per day. At 600 tons per day, to reap all the cane that Guysuco have, it would only require 10 or 11. When the guy went up there to see this thing, because the bed is so unlevel, it was using most of its power, 75% of its power, just to walk, because it was on a slant. When somebody tells you something, it stays in your mind, and because you understand that those fields have to be leveled, you have to laser level that field. And then you have to set a slope. The slope has to be 1 foot drop every 1,000 feet. I don't know, Doctor. I can't tell you. I know that you have a way to do it. I'm not sure what Guysuco is doing. I'm saying to you that when we were there, when we were trying to see if we could interject a little bit of sanity, and what we saw as insane, it wasn't registering with anyone. Friends were more important than sense. So, and a lot of the money going to Guysuco, I'm not sure that's getting to the workers. When I was working with Bookers in my younger days, Bookers showed everyone how big businesses operate. Bookers had their own agricultural machinery department. Bookers had the Bookers garage, the Bookers Ghana stores. In other words, Bookers bought nothing and contracted out nothing. Guysuco contracts out everything, transportation of its own workers. You have people in your compound working, cleaning house and weeding the compound and so on the contract, when your workers at home different industry would have to resolve that issue of getting the cane out of the field. That's your main problem, and you have to solve it, or you
Okay.
will perish, and perish they are. Right now, I said if there was a boat going down, you only see the funnel. It's gone. It's gone down.
Okay, let me take a commercial break and we'll be right back. Listeners, stay where you are. Don't change channels. All from one supplier, oneisanumber.com. It's a place where you can get your West Indian food, your groceries, and everything else. Your roti, your fish, your curry, your meat. And the good thing is that you can use your credit cards, your EBT cards, your debit cards, your credit cards. And it's delivered to your home all across the country. All from One Supply is located at 10809 Liberty Avenue in Richmond Hill. The number to call is 718 551 3292. 718 551 3292. All from one supplier. We can get all your West Indian dishes, all your West Indian groceries. And Globespan. Globespan has been in business for over 30 years. So they have all the experience and the knowledge to get you from point A to point B and to put you in a hotel of your choice. It will address all your traveling needs. Globespan do have upcoming flights to Dubai, India, South Africa, Norway, and other countries. So you can get a package tour to go to all those countries, and it will be a very good experience for you. They're located on 10809 Liberty Avenue in Richmond Hill, and the number to call is 718-845-0437. 718-845-0437. That's in New York. In Georgetown, 227-1701. And in Rosalton, 337-4208. And in Shaguna, in Trinidad and Tobago, 665-3383. And in Val Park, also in Trinidad and Tobago, 645-1604. So call Globespan for all your traveling needs. Now we're back. Mr. Vera, let's say they put Guysuco in your hands, make you the CEO. Can you turn it around and make it profitable?
Well, it's not the job. I would be very happy to advise a CEO as to what has to be done. To solve the problem only means that you have to weed out the bad decision making, which is Dr. Rose, if I told you that some of the machines being bought at Guysuco currently to do important things, that the staff is getting a kickback from the manufacturers, would you believe it? That they're buying the wrong thing because they personally getting a kickback for it? And that's what's going on. It's one thing to say that we could try and solve these problems, but the corruption within Guysuco, it's gone to a stage where it's very difficult, very difficult. And as I told you, the contracts, the awarding of contracts to do these things that you have a workforce, or used to have a workforce, 25,000 people. And you never had no contractors doing anything. Your workforce in the autocrop season used to rebuild your bridges, rebuild your power loft, build cocoa doors, go to the staff houses with some carpenter. And therefore they develop a skill, and they had a flow plan. They come in as a young man, they work in the sugar industry for a few years, getting maturity samples, taking soil samples, spraying for insects. Then they become in the boy gang, draw down cane. There was a flow plan within the industry. In the meantime, people from the fields who showed the thing became staff. I know men who became Bigan Chandra, who was the director of Guysuco in my time. He was a laborer who managed to be very bright and went up and became agriculture director of the company with a degree from Eastern Caribbean Farm Institute. So it's not that people from the industry, it was a thing that was feeding. As they got older, they went to cut cane, and after that they became watchmen, rangers walking around stopping. The thing provided for everyone for his whole life. It became a whole career in sugar. That stopped. Somebody stopped it. Now they only, you see a sign, we hiring cane cutters alone. We're hiring. That you have destroyed the whole thing. That Booker's left a blueprint for you, which is a magnificent blueprint, and it was working quite well, and you actually threw it away. But so now they don't have the hand labor to cut this cane. They're only keeping it alive for a few people, a dying workforce. And essentially, if they don't resolve this matter of this harvesting this cane with machines, that whole industry will just do like what, limp out to the bearing ground. I can't say that if I was there and I had to get what exactly I wanted to do, that I or anyone could actually turn that thing around. And it wouldn't take long to turn around. Once you have the right equipment, it turns around very quickly. Within 5 years, you could turn it around.
So you're telling our listeners that you can turn Guysuco around, providing you got the right team and the right equipment.
I'm not saying that.
Well, what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it can be done. I'm saying that if they could resolve that one issue I'm identifying for you tonight, to get that cane out of that pond out of that field into that pond, we have everything else under control. The industry gets the ponds to the factory on time because it's water transport, so it's very cheap, and it's I would like to see them spend a little more money maintaining the dams, because sometimes those things that I don't think they appreciate how. As I told you, a 350 horsepower tractor trailer is pulling 35 tons of cane along a perfect road to carry Brazil cane to the factory. I've been to San Paulo and saw it. Here, we have a 60 horsepower tractor pulling 100 ponds with 5 tons inside. We're pulling 500 tons with one 60 horsepower tractor. The difference is incredible. So we still have that advantage, and I'm not sure that we're using it as efficiently and effectively as we can, because we still see that they're developing a mechanization plan which includes hauling cane along the road to the factory. Nonsense. You use the waterways. That's the cheapest form of transportation. In Australia, up to now, they're using trains.
Why it's difficult to get the cane from the field into the pond and into the factory? Why? What's that so difficult? Why is that so difficult?
Well, because it's a heavy crop. So a good growing sugar cane will have between 30 and 40 tons per acre, 70 or 90 tons per hectare. And you have to cut it and fetch it on your head, or get a machine to fetch it and put it in the pond. That is where the entire problem of Guysuco lies, the mechanization of the harvesting and the loading in the pond. The entire problem lies right there. If you get the right man who could solve that problem by creating a field layout which is kinder to machines and by the right kind of machines, Guysuco need not be in the mess it is now. I'm not saying that we have a blueprint for it to come back and be profitable. I'm saying it need not be the lame duck it is now, being such a horrible drain on the citizens of this country. Because as much as everybody don't want to admit it, the people who are helping to pay for it with their taxes are not exactly supporters of the government in power today. The police, the GDF, the nurses, the teachers, those people we know what ethnic composition those are. And those are the people whose taxes are being used to pay for this thing. Or money that should be coming from the oil to them is actually being used to give to the sugar estates to do what is, in my opinion, a bunch of nonsense.
Let me say this. If you have people cane cutters cutting the cane, once they cut in the cane, they have loaders behind them to put it in bundles and put it to the punt. So that shouldn't be a rocket science.
Well, it is. It's difficult. You have to know, as I told you, to make that 100,000 tons of sugar per year on those three estates, Albion, Radon, Blairmont, and Iflock, you would have to have a system in place whereby every single day for 141 days, every single year, you have to load 9,000 and something tons of that cane from that field to that factory. I'm saying that the system they have now is not capable of doing it. You have to take it back to the drawing board.
Okay. We have 5 minutes more. Elections on September 1st. What are your views?
Well, my friend Mr. Christopher Ram, I hope he does not get produced a survey which he said he did, where 92 or 93% of our people say that they want a renegotiation of that Exxon contract. It is apparent to me that the government of Guyana, the current government of Guyana, is more working for Exxon and working for the people of Guyana. I'd really like to see, it's one of the things I complained of, when I resigned from the Ministry of Agriculture and stopped being associated. In 2020, I agreed and was a national candidate for the PPP. Because we said in our manifesto we were going to renegotiate that contract. That what we're seeing from it is not beneficial to us Guyanese. And then after they got into power, they reneged on the entire thing, and they're talking about sanctity of the contract. What was the sanctity of the contract we made with the Guyanese people by telling them, if you vote for me, I'm going to renegotiate that thing. And so they voted for you, and then you don't renegotiate that contract. To me, that is every bit a violation of contract. And the guys stopped. We have to remember this is a sovereign nation. This is a sovereign nation. Mr. Boardroom gave us the answer. If Exxon don't want to come to the table, you have to bring them to the table. So what you do is you go to the parliament and you put a levy on every drop of oil produced in Guyana. A levy would have to be paid to the treasury. You see how fast they come to the table. That Bocas came straight to the table to discuss with Forbes. And Forbes rather than asking for the consensus, Forbes said, how much you want for the whole thing? We don't want the whole thing. We want Exxon to run it. We don't want Exxon to go away. What we want Exxon to do is to give us a better deal. And therefore, any party who is promising to renegotiate that contract and including the ring fencing and the actual amount of royalty, etc., will have my support. But right now, I'm still trying to figure out where certain people fit into the picture. The Grenlal, the Mohammeds, the PNC, AFC. I understand you were formerly AFC.
I I belong to no party. What
I have formed that thing.
I did support
I
the AFC, but I'm not a member of any political party in
no,
Guyana.
Dr. Rose, I am a Guyanese who is like an Englishman.
Okay,
In 2019, Boris Johnson won the election by getting the opposite of the 600 seats. He won all of it except for 200 and something, which the opposition got.
right,
The next 4 years later, 5 years later, the exact opposite. The opposition only got 121 seats. The
right.
Labour Party won the election. Of 600 seats, the opposition only got 121, the lowest. Uh, so in England, people change depending on what is the issues and so on. And
That is
the people
true.
here are telling me that they have to be supporting the PPP because that is who they father support and because they're Indian. And they never go and support nothing else. It's their sick, not me. I
Well,
consider them to have an illness
the
as
same thing
me.
goes for Afro-Guyanese. They support the PNC. The country is
Indeed.
divided
Yes,
along
I'm
racial
not saying
lines.
no. I'm not saying no, but I'm saying that uh, that is what racial voting has done for us. We are a divided people. And I have tried, I had formed AFC. It became attractive to me to have a Afro-Guyanese boy, Trotbon, and an Indo-Guyanese man, Ramjatan, both of who were in Parliament as a PNC and as a PPP, coming together to form an alliance for change.
Right.
And so the first several meetings, I begged my friend Christopher Ram to lend us his boardroom. I was there sitting at the head table at the launching. But then I saw that what they were doing was not exactly what was the intention. Of course, always thought that Ramjatan should have been the first presidential candidate because that is where we wanted to make headway. But Raphael refused to do it. And when he refused to do it, and with the way they were structuring the party, I decided that, I was a director of CBU at the time. And the founder of CBU, Mr. Hugh Chumley, called me and asked me if I would join him and Stanley Ming on the One Guyana platform. Well, at that time, Mr. Hugh Chumley was such a close friend of mine that I would never have refused anything that he had asked me to do. And so I joined it. We never became a PNC person, but we were supporting the APNU at the time because I saw that the AFC was going to do damage to the PNC and not the PPP. And then damn right, because of the 2006 election, the the AFC got 5 seats, all of which come from the seats held by the PNC. The
That's
PPP
true.
actually got 2 more seats than in the previous election to 2006. So, so I think that what I want to see, to sum up, in 2011, they were sitting in Parliament with 7 seats, the AFC. They were not part of any party. They were just sitting in Parliament at the AFC. And at the time, I had a friend, Sir Fenton Ramsoy, and he and I used to discuss the way Ramjatan was operating vis-a-vis the way he could operate. So you have to go to Parliament for one thing. You don't have to go for anything else, but you must go to Parliament for your budget. So if you, as the man, at the time in 2011, the PPP didn't have 3 seats in that Parliament. They had 32 seats in that Parliament. So they didn't have control of that Parliament. The
Right.
AFC held the deciding vote in that Parliament.
True.
So now Fenton was saying that the way Ramjatan should be playing the thing is to make a list, a shopping list. We want to name the speaker. We want to have representatives on the procurement commission, etc., etc. About 2 weeks ago, I was doing a research and I called Aubrey Norton and I asked him what commissions, except the Elections Commission, has he been invited to submit a member, not even members in keeping with his representation in Parliament. None, not one, not one. This man has not been invited to appoint. So every commission is all the members are nominated by PPP, every single one, except the Elections Commission. So how are we going to run a country like that, where you're taking everything? The winner cannot take everything like that and leave nothing for everybody else. It's a recipe for disaster, and I'm very much afraid that it will. I hope it doesn't ignite, but it is a recipe for disaster. But I think that I would like to see another situation where the PPP gets whatever it gets, but they don't control the parliament. That the minority in parliament will vote with the opposition and so on to hold up the budget so that they get more concessions and force these two groups, the PNC and the PPP, to work together. There must be more consultations. There must be more respect for each other. There must have representation on the commission so that they could feel that they're making a contribution. Right now, they feel that they're being left out of everything and totally marginalized. And then again, I'm saying that's a recipe for disaster.
Okay, Mr. Vera, we come to the end of the program. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, sir, I'm actually late for an appointment. I'm actually late for an appointment. It was a pleasure, Dr. Rose. I hope that what I said made sense to somebody. But Guysuco's problems are not solvable with the staff it has now, and with the thinking it has now, and with the structure it has now. And as far as this election is concerned, I really hope that whatever happens is that the third force emerges as a independent force, and not. And all coalitions in Guyana have failed, starting with the very famous and very decent Peter Degar. He got himself absorbed into the PNC, and the first election after, for Stequia seats.
I know.
Take a more democratic life. What be going on here now is not no democratic anything. So thank you for inviting me. Say good night to all your listeners and viewers.
Thank you for coming, because you shine a lot of light on Guysuco. At least you educate me on a number of things, and I'm sure our listeners were eager to learn more about Guysuco too. I'll have to invite you back some other time, because the sugar industry really is a mainstay in Guyana, and I don't think any government will get rid of it. It's a mainstay. It is here to stay. Even though we have to subsidize it, but they got to find a way to make it at least profitable or lower the cost.
Well, yes. Let me just interject one thing, which I said before, just reinforcing it. We cannot overlook the importance of those fields that our ancestors left us with, which are natural ponds in a planet which is short of seafood. All the seafood industry is not growing, but aquaculture is growing exponentially. Every year it's growing. Right now, fish and shrimp grown on land have a bigger value than fish caught in the wild. The aquaculture has caught up with the wild catch, river and oceans.
So we want to thank our listeners and our sponsors tonight. A very special thanks to our sponsors and also to our listeners. And thanks to Noir Singh for making this program available, to Devin Bissoon and Ron Gobin, our two technical directors. And again, thanks to you, Mr. Tony Vera. But I want to say one thing, and I want the authorities to hear me loud and clear. I have a cousin in the quarantine, and for the past month, a pipe has broken in front of our premises, just by our bridge. The water is running there like, I don't know how many gallons per minute. And there's the guided water people went there on 2 occasions, and they said they have to have permission from somebody to cut the road. The pipe broke underneath the road. 1 month has passed, and that pipe has now been repaired, and water is running. The amount of water wasted there can give the entire people quarantine water free for a month, because the water is is gushing out of the pipe and flowing into the trench next door. So I'm saying, if a pipe is broken in the States or any part of the world, you see the people there, they fix it in a matter of hours. It's old. This thing happened since, let me give you all the date, May 3rd. So it's more than a month. And they have not cut the road as yet. They have not, I was there last week, they have not fixed it as yet. And I spoke to my cousin today, no one came there to check, nothing again. So water is running constantly out of that pipe and running at a very, very fast rate. And I can't believe this. This is how Guywa operates. It takes you a month to get permission to cut a road to fix a pipe, and water is wasting, and then you want to charge people more for water. Or in some cases, you want to shut water up during the day because they say you don't have enough water to supply to people. Something is wrong. And those in authorities over Guywa and these people should really make them accountable. This is only one instance, but it's only many instances when pipes are broken. It takes Guywa about 3-4 weeks to fix the leaks. This is Guyana. Why is it taking you so long? Anyway, I also want to talk about the internet. We're still having problems with the internet in this country. And if we can't fix our internet, a simple thing like the internet system, how are we going to go forward? But folks, I want to give you something good. My book is doing well on the market. It's called A Race to the Finish Line. The election of Barack Hussein Obama as the first Black president of the United States. This paperback selling for $39.95 now. But I was told just 2 days ago that the hard copies will come out in July. And that will be going for over $200 each. So you can buy it now for a cheap price. It's a textbook, very informative. And those of you who bought it can attest to what I'm saying here. It's a very good book for you all to read. So I hope that you all can get a soft copy before it goes out of publications. Thank you all again once for listening to the program. I know we overstayed our time, Devin, but thanks again to all listeners. Thanks to you, Mr. Vera, and our sponsors. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you very much for having me.
You're most welcome.